It's Corey Hampson, Habatat Galleries, here at the Imagine Museum.
Hi, I'm Jane Buckman, the Executive Director of Imagine Museum, and today I'm with Corey Hampson, the President of Habatat Galleries in Michigan. We are in the Imagine Museum's Glass Now Galleries, and our topic for today's episode is we really want to talk a bit about the younger artists, the new up-and-coming artists, and what is happening in the contemporary glass field moving forward. You're in the gallery business, and the question I get from a lot of young artists are, so what are the galleries? What do they look for? And you having the top glass gallery really in the world, so what would you tell a young artist working in glass coming up? You know, what is it that you're looking for?
I would say to a young artist that's just coming out of school, listen, don't do it. Don't do it unless you are really passionate about what you're doing. Because being an artist that works with this type of material that's completely unforgiving, you really need to dedicate your life to it. You need to dedicate your life to understanding not just the material in the material sense, but yourself. And what that might mean. So if you're not willing to give it your all and throw your whole life into the world of glass, then don't bother. We get resumes, we get pictures, we get images, we get video all the time. And part of the gallery's responsibility is to go through every single one of these images and artists to figure out what might be the new trend or what might be something that may be viable or interesting for collectors to collect. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. I'll tell you that much. We have a lot of internal discussions about what we feel the future might hold or might look like. And young artists that are just coming out, there's new ways for them to promote themselves. They don't just necessarily need a gallery. The purpose of a gallery is to really be a stepping stone to help these artists climb and to get acquainted with the natural environment of which their work should be placed in. So, to introduce them to museums and to collectors and really just get them the ultimate exposure that is needed. We're promoters. Mm-hmm. We're jugglers. It's what we do, and so you really have to have, faith in terms of the gallery that you want to belong with. These young artists, they come out and they just anticipate that they're going to become world famous, but they don't have a path. They don't have a road. They don't have a road map. They have no idea what they're going to do. And world famous doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be in a museum or you're going to be in a gallery. It might mean that you're going to have a successful life at these outdoor art fairs, or you might create a design that works really well in household goods, or it might mean that you're not even working in glass. You're just designing, that. Or you're a maker's maker. There's other ways to become well-known and successful, for that matter. It's not just becoming, I'm in a gallery, or I've taken the next step and now I'm in the Imagine Museum. It's not the end-all, be-all for a career as a living artist. What do I tell? What kind of advice do I give artists? I gave a talk to Paul Stankard had a group at Salem Community College that he goes back every year and gives a talk, and those are his people because that's where he went to school, and it's this gift that he gives them. But he wanted to let them know about the business side of things, so he asked me to give a talk to 35 students or so. And the first thing I mentioned to these students is this really what you want to do? And, it put things in perspective, A lot of artists, by the way, are totally unexposed to the life outside of school. outside of the, what's the next? They're totally just unaware of how do I survive in the world. And there's virtually no classes. There's few classes in some curriculums, but very few in the glass world, how to approach a gallery. What do you do?
Yeah.
So, of course, like I mentioned, we go through numerous photos and videos and phone calls and so on and so forth. But I would say if you really believe in what you're doing, you really believe in it, be aggressive. Be aggressive, get in front of where you think you should show your work. Bring them the work. If it doesn't hurt, get a plane ticket, fly out there, load up the station wagon, bring the kids, get in front of that retailer, and wonderful things would happen. A lot of artists have done that. A lot of artists have ended up on the footsteps of Habatat Galleries saying, hey, look at me. And subsequently, we've been able to develop a tremendous amount of careers over the years.
That's an excellent, I was in higher ed before I came to the museum business, and it was higher art ed. So basically when the incoming freshmen came in, it would be look to your right and look to your left, and by the end of the 4 years, that person won't be there, neither will that one. Because it's truly, your advice is spot on, that for a lifetime in the arts, you really have to, that has to be your focus. That has to be your only focus. There can't be other diversions. And going through school, you learn technique, you learn how to begin to express yourself, but there is just so much more that has to be done. The more you do, the better you get. That's the bottom line to the art making process.
And you can peak. You can get into a gallery and you can peak, but then you could disappear. And so you got to be able to sustain your career. It has to embark on your vision for the future. Now, I've watched artists just disappear, vanish. Artists that were really paving inroads into new artistic ideas, and just chose a different career path. Steve DeVries, for example, in the 80s, was laminating glass, doing work that very few artists were working in, and just kind of disappeared. Decided he wanted to go to South America, and he got into the chocolate industry, and he just did a whole new creative path for him. Artists like Carla Trinkley, working in pate verre like no other person I have ever seen, and decided to go her other way. I mean, you'll still see works in the Corning Museum and in museums alike, but you will not, you'll not see any new work from Carla Trinkley. Why? Who knows why? I really don't have a reason why, but you want to get behind artists that you feel really believe in what they're doing, and really understand their place and where they want to go. And that's really, I think, the reality of when you're choosing an artist to take a position amongst others.
Because you're saying the artist taking a position and working with the gallery, what kind of relationship do you encourage between the artist and the collector? Because that's a unique relationship also. Many artists are so focused on their personal communication or what they want to invest into their work, and then here comes a collector that says, I love that, but I want it blue.
Yeah.
I mean,
So that's a
career as an artist versus working in a studio. So
it's the challenge.
Yeah.
It's the challenge, and it's part of our job as gallerists to really buffer and protect both the artist and the collector on each side. I've run into situations where, and I'm not going to mention any names, even though I really want to, where there's a political situation where, I'm sorry, politically, we don't see eye to eye. Therefore, I'm not going to own your work. And I've seen other artists that said, that collector, there is absolutely no way I'm going to sell my piece to that couple. Why? Why don't you want to do it? Well, they just are not meeting eye to eye. We have to be that buffer, yet we're also that glue that keeps them together. So the whole, when you're collecting a piece or acquiring an object, it's a three-legged stool. You've got the artist, you've got the collector, you've got the gallerist. And the gallerist's job is to steady the stool. And you need to make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page. It's very difficult because trying to get an artist to be on the same page with their work, when you start dictating specifically what you want, you become the artist. And a lot of artists, it's quite difficult. They want that ability, that flexibility to explore with the material or an idea that they might have. And so the biggest, takeaway from what I'm saying, if you're going to commission an artist to do something, just let them be. And let them take their time. Because you don't want them to rush a project. Would you want an artist to sit there and quickly go through something very quickly? Would you want that to happen? No, you want them to take their time to understand what they're making and why they're making it, who they're making it for, and where it might go in the future.
So what you're saying is that it's a difficult balance between the collector, the artist, and the gallerist. What I find interesting about the Habatat Galleries, the Habatat family, is the relationship that the gallery has fostered between the collector and the artist. I've not seen that in other mediums from other galleries. And I'm just wondering what makes that relationship, because the artist feels so comfortable with the collectors feel so comfortable with the artists, to hear them sharing ideas back and forth and just life, how they share each other's lives and understand that. How did that happen?
Well, first of all, the glass industry is unique because a lot of the artists that are working in glass, come on, this is a 50-year-old medium, are used as an art materials. 50 years old, it's young, it's a baby, it should be wearing diapers. Right. So therefore, most of the artists are still alive. Yeah. So you can go and you can interact with them. Well, what Habatat has done, even the name Habatat alone is a place where people can get together and really just talk and discuss their ideas and live and cohabitate and really communicate. And that's really what we try to do at our gallery. And so we have different events where we bring our artists and collectors together to talk. Let's kick off those shoes, let's undo our tie and just sit down and talk. And there's some really wonderful ideas. And yeah, even though there might be some political differences and religious differences and maybe even social economic situations that are completely different, they're all human. Yeah. And deep down inside, these artists are wanting to create something and send a message out, whether it's beauty, whether it's a social statement, social inquiry, whatever it may be, they want to communicate that. So it's really wonderful when they can get together and just talk it out. So the collectors are extremely receptive. I remember when I first started working at the gallery, cold calling people. So, I'm out of college, some punk kid, I'm on the phone, and I had this list of names. And some of these people I remember, I'm like, oh, it's like my uncle, and that's my aunt, and So I'm on the phone, and I'm calling people left and right. And I was surprised that they wanted to hear from me. It wasn't like I was cold calling somebody out of the blue. These people want to know. They want to talk glass. They love glass. Their life's passion is glass. Whether it be the artist, whether it be the collector, there's the common thread. There's the common glue. There's the common denominator. And so the communication became really seamless. This is really my job now? Yeah. To call people that want to hear from me? This is amazing. And we're just going to talk about glass? I love this. I love this. So it made the transition from college into taking over the business quite seamless. And when you discuss anything that's passionate, whether it be theater, whether it be music, whether it be art, whether it be glass, with someone else that's receptive, that also shares that passion. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. It's that communication that on that very level.
And trust, too. There is something that I find as I observe the conversation and participate in the conversation between the artists and the collectors. There's just a trust level. They know who the artists are. They know about their lives. They both on both sides. They share personal stories. It's how's this? How's the family? Everyone seems to be engaged, and I think it makes then for the collector, when they have the pieces in their home, then they actually have the artist and the artist's mind with them. The artist concepts that they're living with the artist. I think because they are so in tune to the artists and the work that they purchase.
Yeah, it's amazing that you just said that. I was in a conversation yesterday with Leah Wingfield, and Leah was discussing why, and I love these minds. They're so so brilliant. But she's, why do people collect? Why? What is the purpose and the reasoning behind it? And there's stories that are being collected, almost like in a book. And what is that book? So these different pieces, objects, forms tell a story. Tell a story of who they are. It's not done for a reason of vanity in any way. It's done for a reason of self-exploration. And so as you're looking at work, let's say by Ann Wolf, I look at these pieces and in front of us, and I see these stories being told, which is very revealing to us. This piece entitled Many, which I don't know if you can see, but it's a passage of time that Ann had occurred and the people that she's met along the way and the different forms and ideas that she's had. And here she is at the end of the piece, coming back to reflect on her life. It's her life's journey, as well as in Dante over there as passage of time. She's passing through the piece. And then behind me you have river, and you have this flow of different people that you've interacted, whether it be a collector, whether it be a gallerist, whoever it may be. It's somebody that has affected your life in some way that she pays tribute or homage to. So I really find that quite revealing and also quite incredible. Also, it tells the story of the person who acquired these pieces. So the legacy that is left. And in this case, we're talking about Trish, who had the benefactor for Imagine Museum, what she has gone through and how she relates to the objects. So as you walk through the museum, you can get that feeling of who this person is.
Talking about the gallerists and the galleries and the collectors, I think that once that there's a maturity in the work, then that's when it is ready to come into a museum.
Or immaturity.
Or immaturity.
Yeah, it's really, at one point I had a outline of what is the criteria, and one of them was must be in school, and must have a degree from a fine arts college, must be in the museum. Yeah, and it had all these different criteria. And then I realized as I you get exposed to more and more, none of that really matters. Some of the work just has to speak to you, and it has to sustain the length of time needed to promote. There has to be enough that's promoted. So artists that are only able to produce 1 or 2 pieces a year are much more difficult to promote. Right. How do you have a one-person show? It would take you 10 years based on accumulating a body of work. So very difficult to promote. Doesn't mean that they're any less of an artist, just as a gallerist, a difficult artist to promote along the way. Whereas there's other artists that can produce a body of work every year, every 2 years, even 3 years or so.
I might define as that their communication process within the piece is complete. So it's not, and it takes a while.
Yeah.
And no matter if you have education or no education, or you just started doing it and kept working at it, there is a point where the connection between the artist and the object that they're making is truthful, it's real. I would call that mature. And not all galleries, there's many levels of galleries, and there's many different levels of sales of what people want to live with and what they don't want to live with. But I think that by the time that a museum wants to look at a piece, because remember, it's representing something, it has to be somewhat universal, so people relate to it. There's a point of view that's always there that the museum then has to hold on to that point of view also, because they're the ones showing it. So maturity comes in not in age or in, but I think an idea is ripe and it's being communicated well. So that's maybe what I would say.
I completely, utterly agree with you. I totally agree with you. But I also could take it one step further in terms of maturity. Your relationships with others and how you communicate on an ethical level. You have to make sure that there is trust between you and the gallery, and you have to understand and know where that trust lies, and what an agreement means, and go forth through that that agreement, and make sure that things are what you create. You want to stand behind, and you're putting it out there. It's your best work. It's excellent. You don't want to cut any corners and give them something mediocre. So it's really important to have that common thread and that understanding in terms of maturity, because we've seen the other side of things. We've seen work that has come through the gallery that might not be the best example or best work that the artist has created over the years or has intended to create. I've got a show, I've got to hurry up and finish up this piece. Well, then let's postpone that show till next year, because we can wait. Yeah. We can wait. Also, when I look at maturity, there's a lot of artists that might have what it takes mentally to follow the discipline that is needed from beginning to end. But there's many artists that may not. They deviate from that plan. Those artists that tend to deviate get caught up in a realm that could last years of uncertainty, and it's very dangerous. Yeah. And so when I look at maturity, I do look at artists that create a plan and then try not to deviate as much as they can from that plan and execute it well. And that goes along with any type of bargain for a legal detriment exchanged for a promise. Any type of contract that is created amongst the gallerist and the artist. So, I agree.
Yeah. So we have acquired some of the and I will say up and coming. I don't want to say young up and coming, because that's probably not we're not looking at 20-year-olds. We are looking at those who have gone through a lot of the trial and error and worked through many different series to really define who they are as artists. So mention some of the artists that of the more up and coming, because that's an easy word to say, but mention some of those that we have in the collection here.
Well,
and why did you bring them on?
There is a group of artists, and I don't want to put them all in the same category as up and coming. And like you mentioned, I don't want to, put them in a niche because or isolate them because of their age in some way, because, as we talked about maturity, some of them are much more mature. But I've witnessed, in developing this collection that, we started early on trying to collect old work in a newer piece and juxtapose those pieces next to each other to successfully tell the story of studio glass. And as we're branching out and these leaves are concerned of our family tree, we're developing and finding young artists. We're not going to collect them in depth as of yet, because they're still exploring themselves and what they're creating. And when we say young, we're talking way out of school, maybe a couple decades out of school. So a couple of them that we've come across, Oban Abright being definitely one of them. He was a student of Clifford Rainey in the Bay Area, and really took on mold blowing to other next level places, and also incorporating other materials like concrete and even bronze. Laminating glass and making these figurative objects. His technique, very few people work in, and he's done it unbelievably successful. Now, as we talked about it, he's in a number of museum collections, but he works on only a few pieces a year. So it's difficult for him to successfully have exhibition after exhibition. Therefore, we're very honored to have Michael, is the title of the sculpture, in the collection. Dean Allison would be an artist. Now, I think Dean Allison, we're talking about artists that really you can understand. The piece that we have in the collection, Should I, is of a 11-year-old girl looking at the hands of a 6-year-old, wondering and feeling like she is young, her body very amorphic and not developed yet, and she's looking at her hands as she's still that young child. And I remember when I was a child walking on the beach with my grandfather, and actually, when I say child, I'm a teenager, but he wanted to hold my hand, and oh no, Papa, I can't do that. And then I went and I held his hand, and I turned into that 6-year-old. So I can relate to Should I by Dean Allison. But I see these as young artists. April Sergeant, probably one of the greatest cameo artists, which is carving away at glass, that I've ever seen. And she studied with Jari Harsuba from the Czech Republic, and really has surpassed so many artists that have carved the surface of glass. So, again, we're looking at youth. Michael Janis, who's not so much of a young artist, but started his life as an architect and got involved at the Washington School of Glass with Tim Tate, and uses powder glass to really communicate his ideas, and then fuses layers upon layers of these powdered glass to really create these rich shadows throughout each object.
And those are only a few.
Oh my gosh! I mean, I can carry on. I think.
So we have the Anthony James piece.
Anthony James, I mean, this optical piece.
How about that?
Anthony James, and I'm very delighted that you brought that to my attention, because you also brought that to our attention at SOFA Chicago, which we ended up acquiring the piece because of the, because of how much we enjoyed it. I remember just staring at that thing with you, and we, your mind just bounces back and forth. Now it's a totally different tradition, and there's going to be a couple artists in the collection that don't follow the studio glass tradition of breaking into the world, but this is an artist that he works with glass. Other artists on that level, you're looking at the top level of artists like Anish Kapoor, who's used some glass. Jeff Koons, who used glass, some lamp working by Pino Signoretto, who ended up being the gaffer on some of his ideas to create glass. Actually, even Dan Clayman worked with Robert Rauschenberg on these cast glass tires. So you have these artists that have used glass, but have not come from that studio glass movement, and that are currently entering the world, our museum here at Imagine. But when we talk about young artists, I mean, young Karen Lamont, she has an exhibition coming up at the Hermitage. I mean, it's quite incredible, quite incredible. At the Venice Biennale, she had work. I mean, just unbelievably, become unbelievably well-known. Rizzoli is producing a book that's coming out this September. She has, the Imagine Museum hosts the largest collection of her work on the planet. And, it's not all the works are out on display, but is really something to see and something to marvel in terms of her, not just artistic ability, but in terms of her technical prowess.
So as we're talking about we've gone through the pioneers and the American masters, and we're talking now and giving some insight into how artists who start working in glass and how they can move forward with their career. And if there is any last advice that you might want to share with either those that might want to begin collecting, and then those who are still trying to break into the field outside of just work your butt off.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one. But is there any other focus or idea or concept? Because not only I think that artists will find this conversation interesting, but I also think collectors will.
I've talked to collectors. I'm not a collector. I own 3 pieces.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You're a collector now.
Yeah.
You have 3 pieces. You're a collector. I'm sorry,
It's
but
not a collector.
so I don't want to label, but it all starts with one. And let me tell you, that one doesn't have to be this, you don't have to rack your brain on what this one should be.
Yeah.
Just take that dive, go visit Duncan's gallery here in St. Pete, or go to Marlena Rose's studio in Clearwater, or go, walk through the museum and find an artist that you like and contact a gallery. Just get exposed, understand what you see, absorb what you see, and just buy what you like. I mean, really, don't have somebody tell you, you should buy this because it's good. That's the biggest mistake that collectors will make, because they'll miss out on what they actually want to purchase. They'll actually miss out because they're relying on somebody to tell them what they like. Perhaps it's a designer saying, oh, this would match your curtains. Whatever it is, they should really rely on themselves. If they really want to acquire a piece of art glass, think about what they connect with, and does it have to match the curtains? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But make that connection. If you have that connection with any art, with any music, any restaurant, any food, anything, just take that dive. Take that dive. And whether you're going to become a collector, that's just education. You just learn about the artists. Luckily, a lot of them are alive. We can talk with them. You can go to the museum and get educated as you walk through and exposed to new artists working with the material. Or you can, simply just go on the internet and do a little bit of research on your own, and go to the Imagine website and see what's there. If you can't walk in and you feel like you want to just do some online research, there's so much information that's accessible to you these days online, that just take that leap and do it. Let me tell you, if you don't, it could pass you by. Something you love could pass you by. That commercial, it was like a Levi commercial. This man and woman walk in and they fall in love instantly, and their minds are going, and they hear they have a child. They're going to the wedding, and then their whole life, and they're getting old together. And then the elevator opens up, and they walk away. And literally, it's one of those commercials. I'm weeping. I'm like, oh, it was so sad, so beautiful, so beautiful. But don't let time pass you by, and don't let yourself be your worst enemy. Just believe in yourself. Trust your aesthetic. Trust your eye, and believe it or not, your tastes are going to change.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that we collected 10 years ago, I look at and I say, well, I like it, but I'm onto something new now. And so don't think that you're going to love it forever. Just love it for that moment, and it'll love you back.
Corey, this has been such a delightful conversation to really be able to do a little bit of a dive into Habatat Galleries and really what Habatat Galleries have done for the glass artists truly in the world, and just a little insight to your world and how you work with artists and the collectors. So thank you so much for today's episode.
Well, thanks for having me, Jane. It's Corey Hampson, Habatat Galleries, here at the Imagine Museum.